Okay, it's time for us to begin. And again, I want to say hello and welcome. Thank you for taking time to join us. Today, we are joined by two candidates that are running for the very important role of U.S. Senator for Arizona. My name is Terry, and I'm the manager of advocacy support for AMAC Action, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for today's event. I just want to mention a few housekeeping items to get us started. First, all of you have joined us in listen-only mode, and that's simply to hold down any background noise. Second, if you have any questions or challenges, please utilize the chat feature. We do have staff that are on behind the scenes that will help you, assist you if you've got any technical problems. We did ask you for questions when you registered, so if any come up during the evening, go ahead and put them in the question box and we will forward them to the candidates for later answering. To be fair to all candidates, the order of the questions will begin alphabetically and then alternate. Neither candidate have been provided preferential treatment, nor have either of the candidates been given any of the questions in advance, but they have been given the topics. And quite frankly, I think in America, we probably all know what the topics are these days. Also, I want to mention to you that AMAC Action is nonpartisan and we do not endorse candidates. A little bit about our agenda. We've got about an hour and 15 minutes for the entire thing. Don't worry, folks, we'll go quickly here. Part one is going to be an overview of our current AMAC Action activities, then our candidates, and we'll do a quick wrap up. The meeting was organized and will be led by our AMAC Action volunteer delegate, Pam Fury of Oro Valley, which is in your Congressional District 6. She'll go into greater detail about the format for this candidate forum. She'll introduce the candidates, moderate it. I will assist her with keeping time. So I want to tell you very quickly about Pam. She's been a volunteer for us at AMAC Action since 2019. At that time, she had retired from her career as a director of human resources. She was interested in finding ways to become active in the pillars of conservatism, and she became interested in activism with AMAC Action. She's active in her community as a precinct committee woman. She participates with the various political organizations in Tucson. Her philosophy, and I love this, Pam, is life is short, live it with enthusiasm, optimism, and gratitude. And I cannot give you enough of my gratitude for all the hard work that you did for organizing this tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pam so we can begin with our invocation and our pledge.
Heavenly Father, your word says, let not your heart be troubled. The state of our nation is troublesome, but God, you know all things. So we pray for our nation. We pray for our families and those we love. We pray for our candidates and ask for their protection. We pray for the peace that comes only through you. And finally, Lord, help us to remember to be still and know that you are God. Amen. And now for our Pledge of Allegiance. Let's begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice
for all. On your screen, you should be seeing information about AMAC. This slide provides an overview of the three organizations that make up the Association of Mature American Citizens: AMAC, AMAC Foundation, and AMAC Action. To protect seniors and build a strong America for our children and grandchildren, we are focused on advancing major issues, which include those listed on this slide. AMAC has 71,000 members in Arizona. And AMAC Action state delegates, there are 8. We would love to have more delegates, at least one in every congressional district where we have an opening. If you are interested, sign up at the end of the program. Terry will tell you how to do that. Now to our forum. Candidates that fulfilled petition requirements and campaign financial disclosures for the Arizona U.S. Senate seat were invited to participate in today's candidate forum, regardless of political party. 2 of those 3 candidates have agreed to participate today. The candidate that did not respond is Ruben Gallo. As Terry mentioned, we've broken down today's forum into 3 parts. Part 1 is that each candidate will answer the first question regarding their reason for running with 2 minutes to answer, and we will start alphabetically. Part 2 is the remaining question and answer session. We have chosen issues that are important to our members. AMAC received approximately 100 questions that I reviewed and formulated into 8 questions. I will ask the questions to the candidates, alternating the order, starting with the first question. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their response on that topic. Part 3, the final part of this forum, is each candidate having 2 minutes to offer closing remarks. And with that, we have a tight format and a tight schedule. As I call on each candidate, please turn on your audio and video while you are speaking, and turn it off when another candidate is speaking. I will turn on my camera when asking the question, and then turn it off when the candidate is speaking. I will ask a question, and each candidate will be asked to provide their thoughts and positions in 2 minutes, except for one question. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Okay, so let's get started with the first question. Alphabetically, oh, what a pretty picture. Alphabetically, Kari Lake is first. So, hi, Kari.
Hello, Pamela. Please,
Hi.
by the way, please jump in if I'm going over time because I can't see the timer on my screen.
Okay, when you see Terry's face, you have about 10 seconds to wrap up. So she'll come
Okay.
on. Yeah,
I don't see Terry's face, but when I do, if I don't, just cut me off.
I will cut you on.
I'm originally from Iowa, so I know how to talk.
Okay. And I'm Italian, so I do too.
Terry
Okay,
will jump in.
Yeah. So there you are. When you see that face, then you'll know.
Okay.
Okay. So the first question: why did you make the decision to run for the U.S. Senate, and what do you consider to be your strongest attributes and accomplishments? Kari, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I don't think anybody goes into politics because they want to. It's a dirty, ugly business. As President Trump says, it's a swamp, and it truly is. But we need more good people in politics. You know, I worked for 30 years covering this great country, 27 of which I covered Arizona as a fair and honest journalist. I know the term fair and honest journalist feels like something from way back when because we've seen so much propagandizing of our news and the media has become truly the enemy of the people. I walked away from a 7-figure contract and the people of Arizona asked me to run for governor. Unfortunately, our elections in Arizona, as we know, are run in a horrific way where the voice and the vote of the people is being trampled upon. And I stood up and I continue to fight for free and fair elections where your one legal vote counts. Not everybody is for that, but I am. I believe that if we have a level playing field, that common sense conservative values will be the values that are the ones that the American people will want to vote for. And I know they have been voting for that. Unfortunately, those results have not been put forward. And we have watched as our elections have been just run horribly. We need to secure our border and bring back the Trump economy. I'm so honored to have President Trump's endorsement. He asked me to run. He said, I need some people in Washington, D.C. who will take this America First agenda and help me move it forward. And I decided after what they did to the people of Arizona in the 2022 election that I would step forward and remain in the political arena. We need fighters right now. That means we need moms and dads, we need grandmas and grandpas, and we need to fight for our freedoms. Right now, we're watching as the federal government is taking away everything that is our God-given, inalienable rights. And we need some fighters in Washington, D.C. I'm in this not because I want fame and fortune. I've already had fame and fortune. It's overrated. And frankly, with right now, our material wealth means nothing if we don't have a country. I'm honored to have President Trump's endorsement, and I will go to Washington, D.C. and fight for his America First agenda and our Arizona First agenda to bring back a solid, strong Arizona with a secure border, a strong, affordable state, and a future for our children and grandchildren.
Thank you, Kari.
Are you guys shooting the question out to me again, or do I just go pump right in?
There I am.
Okay.
Hi, Sheriff. Very
Pat.
handsome picture.
Thank you.
So I will repeat the question for you. Why did you make the decision to run for U.S. Senate, and what do you consider to be your strongest attributes and accomplishments? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, AMAC, for doing this first and foremost, and for everybody joining in. Arizona and America need a proven conservative leader and fighter. That's what we need right now. This country is out of control. We can see it across the board. The top issues continue to be the border, the economy, crime, national security. George Washington said when he wrote the circular letter of 1783, he said, with the conviction of the importance of the present crisis, silence in me would be a crime. Me and my family, we cannot be silent. There's also a saying that's an old Danish saying that whoever has the ability has the responsibility. There is no candidate in this race that brings the experience that I bring, the know-how, the daily hands-on experience of the border and what it's going to take to fix it. There's no other candidate that has run a large agency with a large budget that understands what it is to deal with government. Over $60 million that we balance and we stay within. There's no other candidate that understands the rule of law, nearly 2 decades fighting crime and reducing crime in my county. This is the type of conservative proven leaders that we need. You know, Kari's got the passion, but unfortunately she has surrendered to the establishment. We need those proven conservative fighters now more than ever in Washington, D.C. to represent the people of Arizona and to fight for the things that we love, which are God, family, freedom, and the Constitution. Those things are under attack. And I bring that knowledge and experience unrivaled in this race to this race. And I think the people of Arizona have seen it over the last year and a half that we've been out campaigning. We've loved every bit of it. They've got to see firsthand that I have that experience, that proven conservative leadership and fighter that we're going to need here in Arizona to take not just our state back, but our country back. You know, I love President Trump. I've supported him all along the way. Would have loved to have had his endorsement, but we're going to earn it back when we get through this primary, and I look forward to representing the Republican Party in the general election because we cannot afford, the risks are too high to have Ruben Gallego and Joe Biden back in office. And we stand the best chance of beating Ruben Gallego in that general election. I'll be your proven conservative fighter.
Thank you very much. Now the second question will go to Sheriff Lamb first. The second question is this: what is your experience with balancing a budget, and what is your feeling on the growing national debt and a government balanced budget? And do you feel this has an effect on inflation and our economy? This is a 2-part question, so I'm allowing you 3 minutes for this one.
Well, absolutely. I feel like every other American, the economy is completely out of control. It's destroyed. Our spending in Washington, D.C., thanks to Joe Biden and Ruben Gallego, is out of control. We're at an all-time high, $34.6 trillion of debt. You know, I've been elected twice as a sheriff, and during those 8 years, I've had to learn right away. We had to start to balance our budget, and we had to stay within that budget. Imagine a government official who works to stay within that budget. What we've seen over the last 3 years under this administration is we had in 2020 an inflation rate of 1.23%. In 2021, it went up to 4.7% under this administration of Biden, Gallego being part of that. It went up to 8% in 2022. It went to 4.1% in 2023, and it's currently sitting at 3.4%. That is a cumulative inflation rate of almost 20%. The other reason I know that the economy is not doing well, when you look at Americans across the board, our national credit card debt for Americans went from $765 billion to $1.1 trillion in the last year. That is a 40% increase. That's unsustainable for not just our government, which is completely out of control, but it's unsustainable for us as Americans. The cost of goods that we consume has gone up 25%. I recently spoke to the Great American Pizza Sub Company out in Mojave County, and they were telling me their cost has gone up 100% on their food. They can't pass that on to the consumer. Not only that, Sammy's down in Catalina, North Tucson, their cost of their goods, 50%. What's going to happen is they're going to pass that on to us in the way of higher food prices or in the way of inflation. And as long as we keep putting politicians back in DC that are surrendering to the establishment, which we can expect if it's not me, we're going to have people that are going to surrender to the establishment because they're going to continue to drive the debt ceiling up. They're going to continue to approve bills just like Congress and Senate has done one time after another. We've got to have proven conservative fighters that know what it is to manage a government budget, which I have done. We've got to have proven conservative fighters that are going to stand up for the people of Arizona and fight to get our economy back under control, and that have the expertise and the knowledge of what working within government to do so. I have no doubt that I can bring a lot of experience and knowledge to that Washington, D.C. swamp to help to start to fix this. And the one thing you can assure that I will not do is to surrender to the establishment. Unfortunately, like we've seen Kari do, we've seen her surrender to the establishment. I will never do that. Donald Trump won't do it. I won't do it. That's why we need Donald Trump here. We need Mark Lamb for Senate in the state of Arizona.
Hi there.
I will read the question again for you. It is, what is your experience with balancing a budget, and what is your feeling on the growing national debt and the government balance budget? And do you feel this has an effect on inflation and our economy? And because this is a two-part question, this is where you get 3 minutes to answer.
Well, thank you, Pam, for the question. I mean, like every family out there, it's a struggle to meet our monthly budget, our weekly budget. I just talked to somebody the other day who said they went to Taco Bell to buy dinner for the family, and it was $100. I mean, can you even fathom Taco Bell dinner would be $100? We go to fill up our gas tank, and we spend $150, and it doesn't even get it to full. It's difficult for everybody right now. And most horrifying is, I'm a member of AMAC, and I spoke recently to a woman who was just a couple of weeks shy of her 80th birthday, and she's a widow. And she said, me and my husband have done everything right. We saved, my husband worked hard, we raised our family. And now I'm at a point where I'm alone, and the money that we saved, our nest egg, is not enough to get me through. And she looked at me, and she looked right into my eyes and said, Kari, who wants to hire an 80-year-old woman to come back to work? And no 80-year-old, nobody who's retired should have to go back to work. This is wrong. The way our country's being run is wrong. And Ruben Gallego and Joe Biden have destroyed a strong economy. President Trump gave us a strong economy. Everybody was doing better under President Trump's economy. Didn't matter what age group you were in, if you were just up and coming in your 20s and just starting out, if you were 80 and you were in your golden years, everyone was doing better. And now Joe Biden has destroyed that economy. The reason President Trump wants me in Washington, D.C. is he trusts me to help push forward a strong economy, to bring back an American economy that works for everyone. It doesn't matter, frankly, if you are the most staunch Republican or the most staunch liberal. We want an economy that works for all Americans, and we need to do that. And we need to get back to where we are pushing forward an energy sector that, as President Trump had it going, it was very strong. And now we're seeing President Joe Biden came in on day one. He opened up the border. What did that do? It brought in 12 million Americans who are coming in and taking our housing and all of our services. And guess who's footing the bill? It's hardworking Americans footing that bill. And when I get to Washington, D.C., I'm going to work with President Trump, who, by the way, is not establishment. He is pro-America. And that's why he has selected me and asked me to run for Senate, because he wants somebody who's going to support him. I want to mention one other thing. So many of the people watching tonight, especially in Arizona and states like Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, had their sacred vote trampled upon. I understand what that means. I understand because it happened in Arizona. I saw what happened in 2020, and I spoke out strongly about what happened in 2020. I never shied away from that. And in 2022, when they took our vote, when they trampled on our vote and rolled out equipment that did not work on election day, so 60% of the polling locations were non-functioning, and many of those were in areas with a strong retiree population. I stood up and I fought that. And not everybody in this race believes that. My opponent does not believe that there was any election problems. He will not acknowledge it. He said there was no fraud in 2020. He thinks that Joe Biden won by 81 million votes. I'm pretty sure that everybody watching tonight knows Joe Biden did not win 81 million votes. We need to secure our elections. I understand. I saw on Terry, on your number one issue, it was election integrity. The people in AMAC, the retirees in AMAC, the people who are senior citizens understand if we don't have a secure election system, we don't have a country anymore. And I will never stop fighting for the people. I am pro-America. I'm America first. I'm Trump endorsed. And there's a reason he wants me and nobody else to run for this Senate seat.
Thank you, Kari.
Hi, Kari. Oh, Kari, come back.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's your turn. You get to go first.
Okay.
Here's your question. International relations. This administration has caused tense relations with other countries, weakened our military while increasing our national debt, all while we are experiencing high inflation. That being said, what are your thoughts on funding wars in other countries, such as Ukraine and Israel, while also sending taxpayer money to Iran and other terrorist nations? You have 2 minutes.
Well, my opponent, Ruben Gallego, has supported the Iran deal, which actually gave Iran billions of dollars to support terrorism around the globe, most notably, unfortunately, in Israel, one of our strongest allies. October 7th, what happened there was absolutely barbaric, unacceptable. And if that would have happened here in America, we would be fighting like hell to protect our citizens. And unfortunately, Joe Biden has walked away from one of our strongest allies, Israel. And frankly, Joe Biden is a feeble, weak leader. People around the globe laugh at Joe Biden. We saw him today with the head of state, and he couldn't even walk through the lawn. As he was trying to walk, he was getting lost. He was in the wrong place. We need strength. We need peace through strength. And that is what Ronald Reagan used to say. And that is what President Trump proved to us. President Trump is a strong leader. He is still a strong leader. You'll notice that world leaders continue to talk to President Trump because they look at Joe Biden and they don't see a leader for America. So we need to get back to that kind of strength. You know, as long as we have an open border and we have millions of people pouring across our border, and we have cartels that are running the show in Arizona, trafficking human beings, sex trafficking children, and sending fentanyl, which is a killer of a young generation. I cannot stand by and agree to send money to foreign nations to fuel war. We have a battle and a war in Arizona, and it seems like the people back in Washington, D.C. just don't care about it. The fact that this outrageous piece of legislation that was put forward just a few months ago was sending $95 billion to kill people overseas, while we had a wide open border. 20 billion, pardon me if I said million, billion I meant, 20 billion was sent to the border, but none of it was for a border wall to actually stop people from coming over. And these feckless politicians in Washington, D.C. are okay with 5 million people pouring across our border every year. They wanted to solidify that into law. And we're not going to have that. We're going to stand up and be strong. I am the strongest person on the border. My border policy during my governor's race was the most bold, aggressive border policy. As a matter of fact, I wrote the playbook for how states can protect their citizens from a border invasion. And it's such a great playbook that Governor Abbott is now taking part of it, and he's enforcing it. And guess what we're seeing? Texas is becoming more secure. And because of this ridiculous regime that's in charge of Arizona right now, they're doing nothing and more people are pouring into Arizona. I understand how to secure the border. I will work with President Trump to secure it. And that is the reason he has endorsed me and only me for the U.S. Senate seat in Arizona.
Sheriff Mark Lamb, I will read the question for you also.
We're still doing 2 minutes, right?
Pardon me?
We're still doing 2 minutes, right?
2 minutes on this one. That's all you get.
All right.
It's on international relations. This administration has caused tense relations with other countries, weakened our military while increasing our national debt, all while we experience high inflation. That being said, what are your thoughts on funding wars in other countries, such as Ukraine and Israel, while also sending taxpayer money to Iran and other terrorist nations? You have 2 minutes.
You know, I've been a lifelong conservative, never have wavered. I've never changed. I've always been a lifelong conservative. One of the tenets of conservatism is fiscal responsibility, and also not just sending money all over the world. I'm 100% against sending this money all over the world to people that are fighting wars that they're in. We should be supporting what's going on right here in our own country. We're dealing with homelessness at an all-time high. We've got drug addiction problems. We've got all these issues. And one of the biggest things is we've got our own border. One of the problems is there's an old saying that our friends, and this is true with Joe Biden and Ruben Gallego, who's been part of it. He's lockstep voted for everything that Joe Biden has voted for, is that our friends don't respect us anymore and our enemies don't fear us. Why should they fear us? We have been weak leadership in this office since President Trump left. None of these things would have happened under President Trump. Now we've got them in Hamas attacking Israel. We've got Russia attacking Ukraine. We've got Taiwan at the threat of China. I mean, this is just out of control, but it's because of weak leadership. One thing I learned as being the sheriff for the last 8 years is what strong leadership is and how to have peace within whatever area you have. Now, I've been able to achieve that in the county level, and we're going to take that to a national and a global level as well. But we can't keep funding everybody else's problems. Newsflash for Washington, D.C., we are broke. But here's the thing, a lot of those same politicians, including Republicans, who have voted to send money to places like Ukraine where there's no oversight and there's no accountability for it, those same senators who have done this, many of those senators are supporting my opponent, Kari. This is part of that surrendering to the establishment. You can assure yourself when those bills come across in front of the Senate and the Congress, you can bet that the establishment will put their pressure on her. Me, I'm a standalone guy. I've always supported President Trump. I love his policies, but I'm a stand on my own 2 feet guy who believes in God, family, freedom, and the Constitution. I believe in America. I believe in America first, and I believe in putting American first. And we got a lot of our own problems that we need to fix right here in America instead of sending money outside of this country. So you can assure yourself, I will never surrender to that establishment that wants to keep sending money globally.
I'm so glad you stayed on because the question goes to you next. This is our 4th question. According to AMAC Foundation on Social Security, there is an expectation of a 23% cut in funding Social Security when reserves are depleted in approximately 9 years if nothing is done. Opponents accuse the Republicans of taking away your Social Security. They do it every time there's an election. How will you address this accusation? And what are your suggestions to make sure that Social Security remains viable for retirees? You have 2 minutes.
You know, this is another reason why we need a proven conservative fighter out there in DC fighting for the people who rely on Social Security. You know, we spent our entire adult lives working, putting money into Social Security, only to have our government misappropriate it, misuse it, not treat it appropriately. And we as Americans end up paying the price for it. You know, right now, if you go through the Social Security Office of Actuary, you'll find that at 62 years old, as of December 2023, the average for somebody receiving Social Security was only $1,800 or $1,200, $1,298. For those who are entering at 67 years old, it was $1,893. And for those who were entering at 70 years old, they were receiving just $2,000. I don't know how any family can live on that. And now we're talking about them doing away or cutting back on that. Absolutely not. We have a contract with the American people, and we need to honor that contract. For those people who are receiving the Social Security, we got to keep getting them their Social Security. We can't afford to cut them. For those who are about to receive it, they need to receive it. And then we got to work hard on making sure that this is transparent and solvent and right for the American people. That's what we owe to them. We've got to have people in Washington, D.C. that understand this, that our Social Security and the futures of Americans is not for sale. Unfortunately, that establishment, those people who have been there forever, those guys don't see it the same way that we do. Right now, we've got people that are receiving $1,200, like I mentioned, $1,800, $2,000 checks after paying into Social Security their whole lives, Americans. And we have our government taking tax dollars and giving tax dollars to people who came into this country illegally. Some of them receiving over $2,000, receiving housing, receiving food, receiving all sorts of other benefits that should be reserved for Americans. So the way we fix this is we get government spending back under control. We get proven conservative leaders and fighters in there, people like me that will work with Donald Trump to secure Social Security and make it better for the future.
Hi, Kari. Same question for you. I will read it for you. According to AMAC Foundation on Social Security, there is an expectation of a 23% cut in funding Social Security when reserves are depleted in approximately 9 years if nothing is done. Opponents accuse the Republicans of taking away your Social Security. Every time there's an election, they do this. How will you address this accusation? And what are your suggestions to make sure that Social Security remains viable for retirees? You have 2 minutes.
Well, for starters, we know that the Democrats are actually the ones who are going to destroy Social Security, because guess what? They've turned this economy into a nightmare for people. Take away whatever the future looks like. Let's talk about the here and now. If you are on a fixed income and you are receiving Social Security, you cannot afford right now what you could afford 4 and 5 years ago. So take away the future. The here and now is brutal for people on Social Security. The left is going to say everything that they can. They have nothing to run on. Look what they've done to the border. Look what they've done to the economy. Look what they've done when it comes to our foreign situation, when it comes to our national security. It's been a debacle in every way. I will tell you this: President Trump will never touch Social Security. I will never vote to reduce or hurt Social Security. The people who have worked hard their whole lives and paid into this have done everything right, and the government needs to stand up and make sure their end of the deal is met, and we will do that. And here's how we're going to do it. Obviously, we have to cut spending, and we will do that under President Trump. I think we can slash the federal government by 50%. Most of it is just grossly overweighted with employees that are doing nothing. They're not even showing up for work. And look what happened recently in Argentina. They were in a hole. They were in debt. And President Milei came in and he started slashing some of the government there. And now they're growing their way out of the situation. We've got to cut, but we've also got to grow our way out. And the way we want to grow our way out is by reshoring American manufacturing. We know that under Joe Biden, he wants to send our auto industry overseas. He wants China to take hold of our American auto industry so we don't have an auto industry. President Trump will save the American auto industry, but he will do more than that, and he needs to have backup in the U.S. Senate, and that is to reshore American companies. We are in a incredible opportunity being in Arizona, so close to the Mexico border, that companies who want to reshore back to this country, with our proximity to Mexico, we can utilize that proximity. There's going to be companies that have to come back, and they're going to need some of the things that Mexico offers and some of the things that America offers, and we can grow our economy not only in Arizona, but help reshore high-paying jobs for people to start paying into the system. When we reshore American manufacturing, we're going to see revenues come up, and we're going to see our economy grow, and that's how we're going to get out of this. We can't just slash our way out of it other than cutting the government. We have to grow our way out of this, and the only way to do that is with President Donald J. Trump and the people that he wants to see joining him in Washington, D.C. to push this America First agenda. That's why he has endorsed me and only me for the U.S. Senate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, here's your next question, Kari. This is question number 5. I know you already touched on this, but it's about the border, but I'll read it and you can just, I'm sure there's plenty more you can say about it. Being a southern border state, one of our hot button issues is illegal immigration through the southern border. The current administration is literally inviting illegal immigration to our country and costing taxpayers billions of dollars, allowing cartel presence, causing more crime, drug-related deaths, and affecting the education of our youth and the medical care of U.S. citizens. As a member of the U.S. Senate, how do you plan to curb this crisis, whether we have a conservative majority or not? You have 2 minutes.
Well, the first piece of legislation I plan to introduce is maybe a 1 or 2 page piece of legislation, unlike the legislation that current politicians in DC present, which is usually about 1,000 pages that nobody reads. And it's going to be a piece of legislation that will fully fund the southern border wall and expedite its construction. This will be 1 or 2 pages, and we will make everybody go on record on where they stand. We know that the fastest way to secure our border is with a fully built southern border wall. That's why Joe Biden came in, stopped the construction of it. And not only that, to add insult to injury, he took $300+ million of construction materials for that border wall, and he sold it for pennies on the dollar. It was a slap in the face to the people of Arizona and the people of America. Unfortunately, because of Joe Biden, every single state is a border state. And we're watching as the cartels have total control of Arizona's border. And unfortunately, we're going to see this until we elect President Trump in November and Kari Lake in November, on November 5th. We have to bring about a change because our border will not be secure until we bring about a change in Washington, D.C. Now, I wrote the most bold, aggressive border policy that this country had ever seen. It was endorsed by everybody. Every border sheriff endorsed it. And we're watching right now as Governor Abbott is taking parts of my border policy that I was ready to introduce to Arizona and secure our border before the debacle of the election. And he's taking parts of it, and we're already seeing how it works. Guess what? The states don't need the federal government to secure their border. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 allows the states to take control. When there's an invasion on their border, it allows the states to take control of their border and secure the border for the people of their state. And that's exactly what Governor Abbott is finally now doing. I'm thrilled to see him do that. And we need to empower the states. I just want to remind people, and I know that the incredible people watching with AMAC understand that we are 50 sovereign states. We are not serfs of the federal government. And the states have power to protect their citizens and secure their border. And we laid the groundwork for how to do that. We laid the blueprint out for how to do that. And anybody can go and find out how to do that when they look at my border policy, which was called Defend Arizona, but you might as well call it Defend Texas, Defend New Mexico, or Defend California, because it will work for every state to stand up, push back against the federal government, and save their citizens from this outrageous assault on our border, which is an invasion that we don't deserve.
Thank you, Kari.
Hi, Sheriff. I will read you the same question that I just read, and this is question number 5. Being a southern border state, one of our hot button issues is illegal immigration through the southern border. The current administration is literally inviting illegal immigration to our country and costing taxpayers billions of dollars, allowing cartel presence, causing more crime, drug-related deaths, and affecting the education of our youth and the medical care of U.S. citizens. As a member of the U.S. Senate, how do you plan to curb this crisis, whether we have a conservative majority or not? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. This is another reason why we need a proven conservative fighter, somebody who's been doing it on the border this entire time. You know, I know that Kari talks about the plan. This is a 21-point plan we came out with as sheriffs in 2021 after Joe Biden took office. A lot of that, part of the plan that she put together, which is great, is actually stems from that plan. And these are things that we work on all the time. You know, plans are great, but Mike Tyson has a great saying, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. The one thing that we understand, working the border every day that I understand, I still go do traffic stops, everything. You've got to understand what it's like to have been punched in the face by the cartels, to understand the gravity of the situation, how this impacts Nogales, Yuma, not just Arizona, but the entire nation is really important. I know that Kari had mentioned earlier she's the most knowledgeable. I don't think anybody on this AMAC webinar is going to believe that she is the most knowledgeable on this. There's no question. I bring the most knowledge, the most connections, the most ideas. This is what it's going to take. We've got to hold people accountable. If you come across the border, we're going to hold you accountable. We need to enforce Title VIII. We do need to continue to build the wall. We've got to have NGOs that are not being funded by this government. No funding to these NGOs. They're aiding and abetting in human trafficking. And one of the ways that this border has changed over the last 3 years is we have people coming in from 170 different countries. This is the greatest national security threat we're facing. They're coming from Sudan, Chad, the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. They're coming from Iran, 700 in the last couple of years. They're coming from Turkey, 30,000. They're coming from Russia, Ukraine. They're coming from China, 37,000 Chinese nationals last year. And we have almost double that. We're going to hit double that this year. These are unsustainable numbers, especially when they're military age men. China, as a matter of fact, it's been 140,000 since Joe Biden took office. That is an extreme amount of people coming to this country. The other national security threat that we're presented with every day, which I just stopped a vehicle last week, 2 illegals in the back, fentanyl in the car. The same day, my guys busted another big fentanyl load. Fentanyl poisoning is the leading cause of death amongst the Americans between the ages of 18 and 45. This is a threat. This is our greatest national security threat. No army has had as much success as China has by giving the fentanyl to the cartels at killing Americans to the tune of about 100,000 people a year. So we need people with real experience. There is no time for on-the-job training. This is 8 years of experience and then another 2 decades of experience in law enforcement to understand the intricacies and the complexities of the government, of dealing with the border within government, federal law, state law, and putting that plan together, bringing it all together, whether we have the Republican Senate or not. We're going to need those proven conservative fighters. I will be the most knowledgeable senator in the Senate once I get to the Senate as it relates to the border. And it's not just showing up, taking a picture at the border wall and moving on. This is something that I do every day. And to that point, we've got politicians in DC, even Republicans, that continue to push bills that are not good for it, codifying into law a lot of bad policies that this administration, Joe Biden and Ruben Gallego, have put in place. We cannot afford somebody that has shown a propensity, and Kari has, especially like when we talk about life, about surrendering to the establishment for what they want. We need people that understand the problem and that will stand up for the American people, work with Donald Trump to re-secure the border and secure our American families from the national security threats that the border presents.
Okay, thank you for that. We have question number 6, and this is the question. AMAC Action is working to focus healthcare on the physician-patient relationship and empower patients through choice, transparency, and free market competition, not a Medicare for all scheme. Pharmaceuticals are a financial burden and even unattainable for some Americans right now. And just to give our audience a little information on that, which we did forward to the campaigns, starting in the 2000s, large chain pharmacies began purchasing pharmacy benefit managers. By 2010, PBMs managed insurance benefits for prescription drugs for more than 200 million Americans, effectively giving monopoly power for prescription drug choices to a small handful of companies. That's just one issue that I wanted people to be aware of. How would you address protecting Medicare for seniors, and the high cost of pharmaceuticals for patients in our country. 2 minutes.
Yeah, this is another one of those issues where you need proven conservatives who understand, lifelong conservatives who understand where the role of government is and where it should end, which isn't very far into our lives. You know, Medicare for all is a socialist slogan. It sounds really pretty, but what it does is it eventually drives up debt, which we're already $34.6 trillion in debt. It's not good. We end up having products like what they have in the UK and Canada, where you might have to be able to go to the doctor and it may not cost you anything, but you might wait 12 hours to see that doctor. We need to make sure that it's more solvent, more business related. And these pharmacy benefit managers are part of the problem. You know, they're right in the middle of this. The pharmaceuticals that we're consuming as Americans, many of the generic products, if you look into these PBMs, we're paying 24 times what we should be paying for those because of these PBMs. They're doing a lot what's called spread pricing, which where they go in and they take the money from the insurer, they go to the pharmacy and they give the pharmacy less than what the insurer paid, and they end up taking a little bit off the top for the PBMs. These are some of the things that we've got to stop. There's been some bills actually introduced by a lot of Democrats, both on the Senate and on the House side, that are really regulating the businesses of these PBMs and what they're doing to the consumer, because they're driving the cost of healthcare, especially pharmaceuticals, up. And many Americans rely on pharmaceuticals for health issues that they may or may not have. So these bills that are on there right now would end spread pricing or prohibit it. There's a lot of other restrictions. They would increase transparency to where they would have to show exactly the type of money that they're making on these pharmaceutical things. And once again, Joe Biden, Ruben Gallego, their policies, they will brag about that they've gotten it under control. But the reality is they've continued to drive the cost of Medicare, the cost of medical health procedures up. They've driven up the cost of the pharmacies by pushing all these politicians, pushing these PBMs. We've got to have people that will be there in Washington, D.C. to stand up for the American people, especially when it comes to protecting people's health. And we cannot expect government to be the answer for all of that. If we're looking to government to be the answer, then we can basically kiss all of our freedom and everything else goodbye. Government will take advantage of that. We cannot afford to have anybody that's going to surrender to the establishment in DC when they and their lobbyist friends want to push big pharma issues in or want to lump it into an omnibus type bill. We cannot afford it. We need proven conservative leaders and fighters that will fight for you against all of this stuff.
Hi, Kari. I understand that you're going to need to go, but I thought that I think this next question might be something you might want to address. So let me go ahead and ask that.
Okay.
The next question was this one. How do we address the installation of woke ideology in our government and DEI in our education institutions, right? Today, and how do we take back our country from those unelected federal administration officials and government agencies overreach? How about that?
Wow, can I have can I have 2 hours on that one, Pam? Please.
Well, I figured you want to answer that one.
Well, I mean, there's so many, we talk about how woke ideology has taken over from K through 12 and then in our government as well. You know, I think one of the most important Supreme Court rulings was West Virginia versus the EPA. And people don't really pay attention to that, but the Supreme Court ruled basically that these 3-letter agencies, these bureaucrat-run agencies, do not have the power over we the people, over our prosperity, over our businesses. And I think by using that ruling in the Supreme Court, we can do a whole number on these outrageous bureaucratic agencies that are truly trying to destroy our lives. In the past few weeks, I've had the opportunity to speak to 3 ranchers. One of them had a ranch on the border, has a ranch on the border. He said they're getting 8 to 9 gotaways crossing over his property every day. And he says most concerning when they see a couple of 30, 40-year-old men with a bunch of like 12-year-old girls, which is horrifying. But he also said that during President Trump's time in office, they would see 8 to 9 a year. So this tells you how bad the process has gone. But he also talked about how the bureaucracy of the government is trying to destroy his ability to ranch, to raise cattle, to grow food. And it's also the same for a couple of other ranchers I talked to. They said they want to keep their ranch in the family. They want their sons and daughters to inherit it, but it's getting so hard. It's almost as if the federal government wants them to go out of business. We can't have a federal government that is attacking the people, that is attacking our business. And I know that when President Trump gets in there, he is going to go hard after the federal government. Our government and all of our laws should be passed by Congress, not by three-letter agencies that are full of federal workers that are just bureaucrats. That's not how our government was set up by our founding fathers. And so we need to go hard and start going after that. You know, this is the reason some great fighters like Senator Rand Paul and Senator Mike Lee and Burgess Owens, the great congressman, and Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you know, even the Trump family, Don Jr. is supporting me. They know I am a fighter. I'm going to go in there. I'm not somebody who's going to cow down to the establishment and to the uniparty. I am a fighter, and I believe that it's been proven to the people of this great country. Wherever I go across this nation, people say, thank you for fighting. Thank you for standing up, putting your neck out there. I've never given up on the people, and I never will. I've already had a great career. I'm not looking to be a government employee. I want to serve the people. I want to trim down, actually, I want to slash down the federal government and turn this nightmare around. We have to push this woke ideology out. It is destroying not only our government, but our children. Our children in these universities have been victims of truly psychological abuse with this woke ideology that's pushed on them. I agree with President Trump. We need to take away federal funding to any university pushing this woke ideology. We need to punish any bank that is trying to push an ideology on people. If they don't agree with where you stand politically, that they will then take away your ability to do business and bank.
Thank you.
Kari, I'm going to have Sheriff Lamb answer that question as well, and then there's a 2-minute wrap up. Do you feel you need a 2-minute wrap up after he answers the question?
Sure, I'll take a 2-minute wrap up.
Okay, then let me get him in here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheriff Lamb, here's the question. How do we address the installation of woke ideology in our government and DEI in our education institutions today? And how do we take back our country from unelected federal administration officials and government overreach agencies? Thank you.
You know, as a sheriff and a proven conservative fighter, I've spent the last 8 years, and one way you don't allow this to happen is don't be weak. Don't play defense. You know, as Republicans, we're constantly playing defense, and we're playing into the left. You know, this is Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. Everything you're seeing, they're instilling this. It's been decades of patient attack on us as a society. They're going after our children. They're indoctrinating them in colleges. They're indoctrinating them in our schools. They're trying to take away parents' rights. Our military is as weak, probably in many ways. They're still great military guys, so I don't want anybody to take offense, but I think even the military guys will tell you they're chasing off all the lions. My son just got out of the military last October, and it was because they chased off guys who want to be good warriors, good soldiers. And instead, I saw a commercial the other day of a guy in camouflage putting on lipstick and then on an aircraft carrier walking around and turning and dancing. That's the kind of ridiculousness that we cannot tolerate. We cannot compromise with it, and there is no place for it in government. And it starts because we are soft, and we cannot be soft. We have to be strong, just like I've learned as being a sheriff. If you're soft, they're going to come after you. If you're strong and you don't tolerate these riots and all these different things, all this DEI nonsense that we're seeing, then they're not going to keep pushing against it. But as long as we continue to play defense, you can expect these governments will push on it. There certainly should not be any government funding for this stuff. That is why we need proven conservatives like me. Look, it's easy to talk about it if you've never done it. I know Kari says she's a fighter and she's doing this. It's easy to talk about it if you've never served. One thing is to actually do it. I've actually had to make those hard decisions. I've been in there when I had to stand up against COVID and say, we're not doing the lockdowns, we're not doing the mask mandates, we're not doing the vaccines. I've stood against the federal government in many different ways. That you only get that experience having served in office and getting your feet and your hands dirty by being in the battlefield. And that is what I've done for the last 8 years as a sheriff, and the last 20 years in law enforcement. I look forward to bringing that unsurrendering attitude of being a proven conservative fighter into Washington, D.C., because I know Arizona and America needs this now more than ever, especially if we're going to eradicate this DEI garbage that we're seeing right now.
Thank you. I have one last question on election integrity. Kari, I'll give you a minute on that, and then we'll do closing statements, because I know you have somewhere you need to be. So, Kari, are you still there?
Yes, I am. I'm right here.
Okay. Let me see.
There we go.
Okay. All right. I know you did say some things on election integrity. Trust in America and its institutions is essential to having the functioning of our republic, and preserving our republic depends on having fair elections where all Americans can trust the process.
Yeah.
On a national level, one of the roles of the government is to safeguard the election process. What are your thoughts on how we can restore trust, integrity, and our elections, and your thoughts on this, the SAVE Act, that Safeguard American Act, where the SAVE Act would amend the National Voter Registration Act to clarify that states must require proof of citizenship when registering individuals to vote in elections. So your thought on election like
I totally support that. This would require blue states to make sure that when people vote, they prove they're a citizen. And it would also take anybody who knowingly registers an illegal alien to vote, and they would be facing 5 years in prison. Instead, what we're seeing right now is President Trump in the middle of a witch hunt, facing the rest of his life in prison for nothing. I have fought for election integrity. I currently have cases in the courts, and I know that your other guest on here doesn't think that I'm a fighter. I would venture to ask him to ask the people of this country. They've known as I've fought. The worst thing to do right now appears to be, when it comes to the left, is to fight for the integrity of our elections, for the sacredness of our vote. And I've continued to do that at great peril. My family has suffered because of it, but I will stand up and fight until my last dying breath so that your vote counts. And I want an equal level playing field. I want the most liberal Democrats vote to count. I want the most conservative Republicans vote to count. My opponent stood before Congress and said there was no fraud in the 2020 election. He recently did a Univision interview where he said there was no fraud in the 2020 election against President Trump, and there was no fraud in Arizona. And I know that anybody who is on this call from Arizona must be rolling their eyes when they hear that. We had 4-hour lines for people to vote. In his own county, they ran out of ballots an hour into election day, but they only ran out of Republican ballots, and nothing was done. There's not many people who have the ability to fight. I took every hit fighting for security in our elections. Sheriffs had the ability to fight, and the sheriff of Pinal County cowered, and he's a total coward when it comes to election integrity. He wouldn't even acknowledge that there was major problems, even when law enforcement put together a full-on investigation and handed it to him and said, please do something about what's happening in Pinal County. The people running your elections are running terrible elections, and then they're running off and getting a huge $20,000, $30,000 bonus, and they run off and run away, and you won't even acknowledge there's a problem. Elections are important. Our sacred vote is important, and I will never stop fighting for that. President Trump appreciates my fight. That's why he has only endorsed me. He has not endorsed the other person on this call, because he knows that the other person on this call does not respect our elections, has done absolutely zero to ensure that we have safe and secure elections. And the other person on this call doesn't even live in a border state and acts like he's a border sheriff. He's done nothing to secure the border. Our border has gotten less and less secure. We need fighters in America, and we need moms and dads to jump in and citizen politicians to go to Washington, D.C. I'm honored to have President Trump's endorsement, and I am honored to be an AMAC member and to fight for our senior citizens who've done so much good for our country. I'll fight for their Social Security and everything they've got that they've worked hard for.
And
Thank you.
And Pam, we'll give the sheriff 3 minutes on that.
Okay, Kari, can I let I know you have to go. I'm going to let the sheriff answer this, and then you'll get to do the wrap up first. Okay.
Love it.
Sheriff, there you are. Hi. Okay, so this question is: trust in America and its institutions is essential to the functioning of our republic, and preserving our republic depends on having fair elections where all Americans can trust the process and the results. On a national level, one of the roles of government is to safeguard the election process. What are your thoughts on how we can restore trust and integrity in our elections? And your thoughts on the SAVE Act, Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, which would amend the National Voter Registration Act to clarify that states must require proof of citizenship when registering individuals to vote in federal elections. You have 3 minutes, Terry said.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the SAVE Act, and I think I might have touched a nerve there. But what we expect as conservatives, we expect honest politicians, because she just told you a lot of very untruthful things, which is pretty disappointing. We also expect people to take responsibility for what happens in their lives and what happens in whatever they have. Now, first of all, I wasn't responsible for elections, but yes, we did not print enough ballots here in Pinal County. And guess who didn't complain about it because she won the primary? Kari didn't. That didn't matter to her until the general election. But yes, we fixed that. We fired that guy, brought somebody else back. We fixed those issues and we investigate. And let me go even further before that, because as a sheriff, I was one of the most outwardly spoken sheriffs about election integrity. I worked with True the Vote. I went to every one of these people looking for that evidence of large-scale material fraud. Now, she refers to a congressional hearing I did, and she misquoted and told you untruthful quote. They asked me if there was fraud in every election. You can watch this on the congressional hearing. And I said, yes, there's fraud in every election. And then after explaining to him what fraud, and he agreed, a Democrat agreed, the next question was, do you have evidence of large-scale material fraud? I do not. I have zero evidence of large-scale material fraud. That's an important question. What I should have quantified with it was in Pinal County, because that's my bailiwick. So to say that I don't believe in fraud, or that I don't believe that Joe Biden, I don't think Joe Biden got 81 million votes, but I don't live in the world of feelings and thoughts. I live in the world of evidence, what you can prove in court beyond a reasonable doubt. And when I'm testifying in Congress, you better be damn sure I'm not going to lie. I'm going to make sure that they know the truth. Any one of these people, including Kari or any one of them, could have brought me the evidence that was actionable in court for me to do something about it. But what did I do? I put cameras on all of our drop boxes, our ballot boxes within the county. And not only did we monitor it, we monitored it. We had opened it up so that our citizens could come in and monitor all of our drop boxes. To say that I do not think there's fraud or care about fraud is completely incorrect and not truthful. And we did everything we could. But the one thing she can tell you is that she never delivered large-scale material fraud to me. Now, the responsibility part, Kimberly Yee won by 300,000 votes, 11%. The ballots not being the wrong size also affected Kimberly Yee. The machines not working on election day also affected Kimberly Yee. The reality is 60,000 people decided not to vote for governor or senator. 74,000 people wrote in things like Goofy, Mickey Mouse, or Donald Duck. Only 54% of Republicans returned their early ballots. It went up to 61% the day of the election. In many ways, while we have fraud and we have a lot of things to fix, and the SAVE Act will help it, and that's a state issue, by the way. Article 1, Section 4 says that the election clause is a state issue. So as a senator, my job will be to support things that encourage ID verification, but we got to protect the fact that this is a state's issue. And as a sheriff, I understand that. I'll do it. I've always fought for election integrity, contrary to what people want to say, but I live in a world of laws and rules, and I just can't go out saying whatever I want to say. In the end, we've got to be responsible as Republicans that we didn't do enough. Regardless of what kind of fraud there is, the votes are there. We've got to do more. We've got to be better candidates, and we can't have candidates that are willing to surrender whatever Washington, D.C. says so that they can win elections. I have always been a conservative. I will never change that. I don't waver. I don't flip-flop. I say what I say. I don't play defense. Why? Because America and Arizona needs proven conservative fighters that are authentic, who know what it takes to fix this country, and that's who I am.
Hi, Kari Lake.
Pam.
Hi.
Pam, how are you?
You have 2 minutes for a wrap up.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you, Pam, for putting this on. And AMAC, I can't believe I'm a member. I guess that means I'm a mature American. And
Yeah.
I am yeah, I know. Thank you for reminding me. I am starting to look toward, retirement. And you start to look and reflect more on life and what your legacy is going to be. And my legacy, I hope, is that the people of Arizona understand that I've stood up for them every day since the day I drove into Arizona. I drove into Arizona in 1994 as a young journalist, and I fought for the truth that whole time. Not many people would walk away from a 7-figure contract and say, I can no longer do this job because this job is not telling people the truth. And I did that during COVID when I walked away from my amazing career. And I started fighting for the people of Arizona. I understand the issues. I understand all of the issues, from water to economy, to when it comes to education and education freedom for our children. I understand the border. I understand law enforcement. I understand foreign relations. And I've been covering politics for a long time. President Trump asked me to run for office. I am honored to run for office. He knows he needs fighters. He doesn't need people who deny reality, who deny what's really happening. And he needs people who will understand the corruption in our system, whether that corruption be at the DOJ and the FBI, as we're watching them weaponize our government against people like President Trump and others, or whether it be right down at the local level when it comes to our elections. And we have people who actually have the power to do something, who sit by and close their eyes to it and ignore it. I will continue to fight for Arizonans. I have never stopped, and I will go to Washington, D.C. And as a mother who's deeply concerned about my children's future and yours, I will fight to make sure that we have legislation that shores up our national security, that secures our border, that brings back our energy independence. And when we do all of that, our economy is going to come roaring back as we reshore manufacturing and make sure that our young people have an opportunity for the jobs that are going to pay them enough money to actually live the American dream with one job. Imagine that. Not having to have a second job and then maybe a third part-time job. So I'm going to work really hard for the people. I'm honored to have President Trump's endorsement, the endorsement of Senator Mike Lee and Rand Paul and many other fighters who are fighting for the American people. There's a reason they are endorsing me. This is an expensive race. We're up against the Soros machine, and raising money is incredibly important. I've raised $4.2 million in the last quarter. We need to make sure someone is in there who's not raising less than they're spending, like like the other person you have on this call. It's critical that you can raise the money to win this race and also have the support of the people who matter. And I thank Arizona for encouraging me to run, and I thank AMAC for having me on tonight.
Thank you, Kari.
Sheriff Lamb, you now have 2 minutes for a wrap up.
Well, Pam, thank you. Terry, thank you. AMAC, thank you so much. You've heard me use a consistent term tonight, and that's a proven conservative fighter. I've been a lifelong conservative. I don't waver on those things. The stakes are too high for anything else. We talk about raising money. Look, I may not be raising the same amount, but I'm still right there in the race. As a matter of fact, I'm only down a few points. And my opponent is down to Ruben Gallego by 14 points, 13 points in one poll, 14 points in another poll. Guys, the stakes are too high. If you were hiring somebody to come in and run your company, a CEO, and by the way, this is one of the highest positions in our state for political office and certainly in the country. If you were hiring somebody for that job, would you put somebody in there that really had no experience in any of this? You're going to put somebody in there that's a proven winner, that's won 2 elections, that's beaten the Democrats, that understands the issues that are affecting Americans and Arizonans, which are the border, the #1 issue, the economy, crime, national security. We need to defend life. These are all conservative values that are ingrained in me, and I bring the experience necessary. We cannot afford to have another 4 years of Joe Biden, and we certainly cannot have Ruben Gallego as our senator over the next 4 years. If we put Kari into the general election, we can bet that Ruben Gallego will likely be the senator, and we jeopardize winning this election for President Trump. Right now, we need people that are proven conservative fighters. While I appreciate her passion, this is not the race right now. This is not the time. The risks are too high. We have to put a proven conservative fighter in Washington, D.C. that no matter what does not surrender to the establishment or surrender to Washington, D.C. And we need somebody that is constitutionally minded, whose barometer is set on 4 pillars of God, family, freedom, and the Constitution. I get it. I am that proven conservative fighter. The money, I'm tired of Washington just dictating who they think is going to be our representative. And frankly, it doesn't matter how popular you are outside of this state or how much they think you're a fighter. What matters is what do the people of Arizona think? And the polls show that the people of Arizona think that Mark Lamb is the best candidate for this primary on July 30th and will absolutely beat Ruben Gallego in the general election. And we will take this state and country back. And I look forward to working with President Donald Trump. We've done it before when I was a sheriff and he was a president. And I look forward to getting back in there and working towards it again and fighting with them to take care of all these issues that Joe Biden and other bad politicians like Ruben Gallego have created for us. So God bless everybody. Thank you so much for being on. I would love to have your vote on July 30th or whenever you get your early ballot. Please send them in. Let's take this country back.
Thank you. I want to thank our candidates for taking the time to address AMAC members and other guests in Arizona. Your attendance today was highly anticipated and greatly appreciated by AMAC and all those who joined us today. And to our AMAC members and guests, thank you for spending time with us to learn more about these candidates, and for being AMAC members or considering to be an AMAC member, and for staying involved in the process. I'm going to turn it back to Terry now for final remarks. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Pam. Thank you, candidates. Wow, that was fiery. I totally enjoyed this tonight. Pam, you put a lot of work into this. Holly and Christy, Holly in particular at the AMAC Action Office for all the work. On your screen, you will find a handouts pane that if you click on it, you can download a link to sign up for our calls to actions if you so desire. But if you have difficulty with that or any questions or comments, don't worry about it. Just email us at info@amacaction.org. I will tell you, I have been watching the time and I did make time adjustments as we went through this. We're also always looking for new AMAC volunteer advocates to meet with our elected officials or to hold meetings such as this. Again, you can contact us at info@amacaction.org. To our friends that joined us today that are not AMAC members, you can find more of that and its benefits at amac.us. I'm going to leave this page up for a few minutes to give you time to take down any addresses you would like. But again, I want to thank all the AMAC members and guests that have joined us. It was an honor to be here with the 2 candidates. And with that, that concludes our meeting for today. Thanks again, folks.
Yikes.
Good job.